Redline Logbook here to explain the leveling system a little better in Danmachi, because I've been getting a few questions about how certain things work in it. For example, question number 1, when does the power of a lower level reach the power of the level above? For example, what stat does a level 1 finally have the same strength as a level 2? And the short answer to that is never. At no point does a level 1 ever reach the power of a level 2 unless you're Bell or Elphia, because Bell has Leia's freeze and Elphia is just built different. And the reason for this is because no other characters except for Bell and Elphia have ever been able to exceed 999S in a skill. That is the max. It's 0I to 999S. There is nothing above unless you're Bell, of course. And at that point, that is when you start to reach the power of a level above the one you're currently on. And the only reason why we know this is because we know what Bell's stats were when he fought the Minotaur. They were all S except for his speed, which was double S. And I know many of you are going to say that weren't they all double S and his speed was triple S? No, that was what he got after defeating the Minotaur, because he got so much XP for that. Yes, when you commit a feat that allows you to level up, you also get the XP to your lower level before you level up. Now back to Bell's fight with the Minotaur. Bell's fight with the Minotaur was quite simply Bell on the verge of death the entire time, only surviving because he's able to keep up with the speed of the Minotaur. This was stated multiple times by both Bell and the Loki Familia, where Bell could not survive a single attack from the Minotaur. And once more, his defense was S, and yet a level 2 monster like the Minotaur could kill him in a single blow if it wanted to. So even though he had an S in defense, it didn't matter. It was still worthless against a level 2, which could one-shot him. His S in strength was also meaningless against the Minotaur, because the Minotaur's hide, its defense was so high, even with Bell's S stat at level 1, wasn't strong enough to cut through the Minotaur's skin. For Bell to overcome this, he actually needed a higher tier weapon to pick up the slack of his inferior strength, this being both his Hestia knife and also the greatsword that originally belonged to Otter. That's why Bell was able to cut the Minotaur's hide and shove his hand into its guts to do fireball on the inside, because it was a higher tier weapon designed to handle Otter's strength, at least for a while. Every other weapon Bell tried, besides the greatsword and the Hestia knife, basically just shattered on the skin of the Minotaur. And once again, Bell used his magic, Firebolt, against the Minotaur, and it had no effect. Now, part of this had to do with the fact that it is a 0 chance spell, which means it's the lowest tier of spell possible, and also the Minotaur's skin has resistance to fire magic, but even so, Bell's magic was S tier, and it still had 0 effect. And so, the last attribute he had that actually was able to equal the Minotaur, a level 2 monster, was his agility, because it was double S, which means the only way a lower level individual can match the abilities of a higher level individual is if they have double S skills. But even then, they're on the lower end of the level above them, because the Minotaur, speed-wise, is actually on the lower end of speed for a level 2. In the middle floors, there is a monster referred to as a Ligerfang. It looks like a saber-tooth tiger if it had white fur. This monster, for the most part, is equal in stats with the Minotaur, except its speed, which is above the Minotaur, and so it is actually considered to be a stronger monster than the Minotaur. This is important because if Bell at level 1 fought the Ligerfang instead of the Minotaur, he most likely would have been killed, because at that point he wouldn't have been equal in speed with his opponent, he would have been slower than it, and the Ligerfang would have just speed blitzed Bell and ripped him apart. So even with double S speed, he still would have been slower than this level 2 monster. In fact, even if Bell had triple S in speed, which is what he has right before he levels up after defeating the Minotaur, I still think the Ligerfang would actually be faster than Bell, because once again, it's on the faster end of a level 2. And the reason why I say this is because just like how the Ligerfang's speed is the upper end of speed for a monster at level 2, the Blue Crab's defense is the upper end of defense for a monster at level 2. And there is no way in hell Bell at level 1, even with triple S stats in defense, would be able to compare to a Blue Crab. We know this because, first off, Bell had S-class stat at level 1. This S-class stat was weaker than the armor he was wearing when he fought the Minotaur, which was low-grade adamantite. The Minotaur destroyed this armor with one punch. Now, it is straight up stated that the Minotaur's skin is stronger than the armor that Bell was wearing. In fact, Welf made stronger armor using Minotaur hide later on for Bell. And then the exoskeletons of the Deadly Hornets is actually considered stronger than the hide of the Minotaur. So we're already going a tier above that. And then a tier above the Deadly Hornets is the Blue Crab Shell. In fact, the defensive skill for the Blue Crab Shell is so high that it takes level 2 adventurers 2 or 3 blows on a blue crab to kill it. And we know this thanks to the simple fact that both Well and Oka were on the front lines to hold back that giant flood of blue crabs during the Masuge incident. And they are both level 2, specifically focused on strength. Oka's a tank. He focuses on strength and defense. That's his thing. And he was having an issue with the crabs. So the upper end of defense for a level 2 is a blue crab, and the upper end of speed for a level 2 is a Ligerfang. As such, there is no way a level 1, even with triple S stat skills, would be able to compare to these things. That is the gap in power between a level 1 and a level 2. And of course, this goes for every single level. A level 5 with double S or even triple S skills would basically be on the lower end of a level 6, if they're lucky. So then you're probably wondering, how do most adventurers overcome the power gap then? Because in the end, the deeper you go into the dungeon, that's bound to happen eventually. There's no avoiding it. Well, that's where skills and development abilities come in. They help you push yourself above what your stats should normally be. This being a perfect example of Bet. He is the fastest member of the Loki Familia. Even back when he was a level 5, he was still the fastest. And there were 4 members that were level 6. Eyes, Finn, Reveria, and Garth. All level 6, but all slower than a level 5 Bet because of all the skills he had that compounded his speed. And of course, depending on what kind of fighter you are, you will have skills that increase whatever stat you are most focused on. This is the most common way that you would overcome the level gap that exists in Danmachi. Second question I get a lot is, how much does a level up increase your senses? Well, we get 2 big examples of one's senses being increased thanks to the level ability. That being Wealth during the Zeno arc. During the Zeno arc, the Hestia Familia were trying to gather information, and they were all doing it in their own way. The way Wealth was able to gather information was by going to the guild. And what he basically did, because he had a level 2's hearing, he just stand in the corner and then listened to everyone talking in the guild. And it's not like these people were screaming out loud. They were having private conversations with each other, and Wealth was still able to hear them. So at level 2, you basically have the ability to hear an entire conversation happening on the other end of a lobby of a government building. So yeah, it is a massive increase just by 1 level. And this increase gets even more ridiculous the higher your level gets. Because the second example we have is Bell at level 5. Bell at level 5 was in the guild house talking to Ina. What their conversation was isn't actually important. What matters is that Bell was then able to hear the sound of a foghorn. This horn was actually the horn of the school district announcing that it's getting close to shore. This is important because the school district docks in the port of Melon, which is located 3 kilometers or 1.8 miles away from Aurorio. Which means at level 5, Bell was able to hear a foghorn that was being blasted almost 2 miles away. In fact, it was probably over 2 miles away because the ship hadn't made port yet. It was still out in the ocean. And yet Bell was able to hear it as if it was within his purview. And once again, this affects all senses, not just hearing. So the distance you can see increases, which is why someone like Naza can be a sniper with a bow and arrow. Increases your sense of smell, which must be horrific for any animal person who already has an enhanced sense of smell. And most likely increases your sense of taste and touch. We also learned that it increases your brain's capacity to process information, but it does not increase your IQ. So if you have an average IQ, it doesn't matter how many times you level up, you're not going to get any smarter. But you're able to compress the amount of time it takes to think through a thought. The individual that takes advantage of this the most is actually Finn, but that's because he has an above average IQ. And he's able to process large amounts of information and basically go through an entire chess match in his head in less than a second. He can do this because he's a level 6, and he's just able to just process every possible outcome he can think of at that moment, which then allows him to change plans on a fly, which is why he's one of the greatest leaders in Aurorio. Bell showed a lesser version of this because he doesn't have Finn's IQ after he became a level 5, and he spent time in the school district. When he ended up going back to his familia and going into the dungeon, he was able to do his job as the leader, as he always does, where he's taking on most of the monsters and fighting, but at the same time, he was also looking at everyone else and focusing on what they were doing, so this way he could then change the strategy up just in case something was going wrong or whatever. What also seems to be affected is your internal organs, so you actually get a greater lung capacity, and most likely your heart can pump even more oxygen through your body. We know this because during the Zeno arc, to get to the hidden village The Hestia Familia had to swim under a river in a cave, and they straight up mentioned that because they all have fauna, they can hold their breath longer. And the third question I always get about leveling up is how much does it slow down the aging process? And this is actually kind of a complicated one because we don't really get a lot of information on this, except on First Class Adventures, which is a level 5 and above. It seems once you hit a level 5, you age at half the rate of a normal person does. So basically, you've doubled your lifespan. We know this because Finn looks like he's in his 20s, when in reality, he's in his 40s. In fact, Finn giving us this information is actually what told us that you slow down the aging process as you level up. Another individual who is stated to look much younger than she actually was, Valletta, one of the leaders of Evilis. She's a level 5, and she's actually in her late 30s, but when the Loki Familia are on a manhunt for her, they mention that she most likely looks like she's still in her mid-20s because she's a level 5. Once again, we don't really get a lot of information on the lower levels effect on aging. We only get one little hint, and that is for Belle's mother, Materia. Materia suffered from a horrific disease at birth that was slowly killing her. She was given a fauna solely to extend her lifespan. That was it. She never became an adventurer or anything. The only reason why she became a level 1 was because it had the power to extend life. Which means as soon as you get a fauna, your lifespan does extend. And it just continuously increases the higher your level gets. What I'm about to say is not being confirmed, this is just my best guess. And that is, it goes by 10 percentiles. So if a level 5 reduces your aging process by 50%, then a level 4 might reduce your aging process by 40%, a level 3 by 30%, a level 2 by 20%, and a level 1 by 10%. And I just answered the 3 main questions I usually get on this subject. So if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, give a thumbs up so you can enjoy more Danmachi and other things. Thank you and have a great day.